So next up, we have Thomas Nahn. Thomas is on our product team. He's one of my colleagues we work closely together with. We love learning, nerding out on the semantic layer, and we're very excited to bring some of the things that he has working on with his team to market, specifically with our DBT folks and in other areas of our partnerships and integrations, and breaking down the four walls of Tableau to allow you to use it in more ways than just coming to our UI and using it. So because we're employees of Salesforce, Thomas threw up the forward-looking statement. So from here, buddy, I'll let you take it.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you, Timothy. Actually, that's a great setup for the things that you can do outside of Tableau, and you can bring that back inside Tableau. And that's really the Tableau semantic layer is all about. As Kevin said, this is as employee, we're required to show this forward-looking statement. Well, hello, DataDevs, and thank you very much for joining this call today. I'm excited to be back to talk about bringing your own semantic layer into Tableau. As many of you have been working in a dev-centric tools like DBT, creating your DBT model in YAML, or in Looker, writing LookML to create Looker explores, so that your organization can unify a core set of metrics to use across BI, data science, AI, or even spreadsheets. Our next innovation in Tableau is the semantic layer of the Tableau data model, is to enable you to reuse the same metrics and evolve them with the Tableau data model itself. For those who don't know me, my name is Thomas Nahn. I'm a product manager here at Tableau. Been here at the company for just slightly over 7 years, working on areas from nested sorting to ISO 8601 to more recently relationship data model and multi-fact relationship that was just released in June. And today, we will review the Tableau semantics to share with you the underpinning of the Tableau analytics. Then we'll go over the recent update to MFR multi-fact relationship or shared dimension, because this lays the foundation for the semantic that we need for metric integration. Before we go deeper into how we plan to integrate with metrics, I'll spend time to share with you our perspective on metrics, how they align with what's available in Tableau today, and what we'll be building next. And finally, if there's time, I'm happy to spend some time doing Q&A. With that, I want to start with the semantic layer. It has been existed since the 1990s from BI tools like Business Objects and MicroStrategy. Semantic layer back then was very rigidly defined in a very linear manner in order to answer a limited set of questions because computation resources was expensive. Tableau disrupted this market with self-service on a PC with the introduction of SQL. So business analysts can answer the analytic questions without going into rigidly defined semantic layer. And you might wonder, what is a semantic layer? Gartner defines it as having 5 key elements. The first, you have to be able to have data abstraction so that you can rename, combine your raw data columns into fields with meaningful captions. Second, data consistency. You can create a single source of truth where many analysts have the same shared understanding and interpretation of data by using the same underlying data model. 3, user-friendly access, and the semantic layer had to be accessible for BI tools like Tableau or even spreadsheets. And then 4, the data source integration. The semantic layer has to do the heavy lifting of combining many data sources together, whether they are live and or extract. And 5, data governance. Ultimately, the semantic layer only is useful and scalable if it can be governed, from the row-level security to the governance of semantics, which I'll touch on a little bit later. And Tableau disrupted this BI market because our process of helping analysts see and understand data with the cycle of visual analysis is not linear. So therefore, our UI has no wizard, no dead ends. This cycle is more like a conversation than a flow of data through a process pipeline. It follows twists and turns that you understand the data grows. It's also important that our tools stay out of the way of this conversation with data, so it can proceed between people and their data. As user iterate through cycle of visual analysis, Tableau stores away the information about what data to connect to, how they're related to each other, what fields are useful, what fields are not so useful and should be hidden, which fields have more user-friendly caption, how are they arranged in the hierarchies, and what dimension tuple can be used as sets, all these within the Tableau data source. This can then be shared as published data source for others to leverage on the right here. And once a Tableau published data source or PDS is available, multiple workbooks can then be created using the shared semantics so that multiple visual cycle analysis can take place asynchronously using the same underlying data model that is built on the same set of tables. Tableau is also flexible in that analysts can create more fields or hide fields from the same PDS in different workbooks. So here now you can see how your organization can leverage the same underlying data source, or externally, you might call this underlying semantics. In support of the cycle of visual analysis, Tableau also built a very non-modal, non-wizard, non-linear, and iterative UI to incrementally building out the semantics in support of visual analysis, which can then be published as a published data source. As shown in the animation here, the process may seem linear, but the Tableau UI support the analysis analysts in their journey to have conversation with their data, which they can publish and share with their colleagues as the PDS. As you can see here, all these steps are needed to create a semantic layer, even though Tableau chose not to call it a semantic layer. Okay. When Tableau actually introduced the published data source as part of the new data server back in 2012, our internal training material actually make fun of what was the industry standard jargon-loaded language of semantic modeling, schema, etc., and downplayed our semantics as the published data source by simply saying that I have cleaned things up for myself to use. Little did we know that the published data source turned out to be the pivotal data asset that the #1 customer request of all time on Tableau Community Forum is the ability to combine different published data sources together, which I'll cover a little bit later. But in 2024, the tide has changed. We now know that what I would clean up for myself and useful for the one person is also useful to my teammates and colleagues, and also to organization, and to also feed into the tech stack within the Tableau and also outside for people to use. Now, this was why Tableau embarked on the journey of making and updating the data model and making it flexible back in 2020. With the introduction of the relationship data model in the past 4 years, we have re-architected Tableau so that we can support more complex data models. So analysts can create data models that are even more useful and more flexible and can even answer more sophisticated analytic questions with the goal toward fewer data sources and toward a single source of truth, and with the kernel of this shared semantic being the published data source. As I've noticed a lot of customers today, when you're analyzing your data in Tableau, most users are just using a single table. The concept of a relationship data model is for you to be ability for bringing multiple logical tables and be able to relate them together and let Tableau perform the necessary join behind the scene to answer your question. So therefore, you don't have to think about what join to use as you're creating a data model. So you might find more detail in the multi-fact relationship if you search our blog, help articles, and YouTube videos, which I've linked in the PDF of this document here. The brief summary is that multi-fact relationship allows analysts to bring together data that may have direct relationship, but may not have direct relationship with each other, and be able to look for correlations and explore potential data relationship. They can build out a more holistic data model that can integrate metrics from different business units into one single data source. How does the semantics work? So in the new multi-fact relationship data model, what Tableau does is that we issue separate logical query to each individual facts. In this case, we have a data model that have 4 separate set of facts. However, if I just bring in the Tableau, bring products into Tableau, for example, and I want to query against my KPI against inventory, against marketing, against sales, Tableau issues 3 separate queries. And then we stitch this aggregated result together using products. So in fact, that's why we call it internally, call this data model shared dimension, because shared dimension is the key idea here that we can bring together by stitching things that are not directly related to each other, but they have some tenuous relationship via the product dimension. And this is the key foundation that we need for federating semantics, or the ability for us to bring in other semantic layer. And it's also one of the key semantic foundation for us to do composable data sources, or externally, customers have been asking for the ability to join published data sources together. So another thing that we're also doing in the Tableau semantic layer, or Tableau published data source that's coming in the coming release next year, is the ability for do data source filter. So today, when you perform data source filter, Tableau remove not just the row of data from the data, the table that the data source the filter is working on, but also all the relevant tables from all the other tables. So we call it pervasive filter. In the new coming release of Tableau in next year, we have the flexibility of actually applying the filter on the table before it becomes joining or related to other tables. So now we have to give you this flexibility so you don't need to write custom SQL to pre-filter your data to reduce the amount of row so that you can actually integrate it all together. Or another alternative, as Timothy showed earlier, you can always use TabPy or table extensions to pre-filter your data or process your data before you bring that back into Tableau. So with that, let's turn to talk about metrics. Metric is something the flexibility is, now that you've seen the flexibility of the Tableau data model and the semantic or multi-fact relationship, these are the key elements we needed to bring in metrics into Tableau. Before we talk about bringing metrics into Tableau, let's talk about what is metric. There are 2 key elements of a metric. They are calculations that have been defined, and users should accept the value as truth without question. One example I like to use is the macroeconomic indicator, gross domestic product, also known as GDP. So unless you're an economist, we all accept it without question. So that's a key part of metric. The second part of metric is that metrics are always broken down by specific dimensions. In the case of GDP, it's broken down by country and fiscal quarter. And in fact, we define the recession is if GDP has gone down for 2 consecutive quarters. And the third part is not a key part of metrics, so how I see other metric providers tend to do is they like to group metrics that share the same set of dimensions together. So in dbt, they call these safe queries. In Looker, they call these Looker explorers. In Tableau, they will appear as virtual table. So you might wonder, how does Tableau deal with this? For those of you who've been using Tableau for a while, this might remind you of something in Tableau already. It's called fixed LD expression. So let me go through the key elements of fixed LD expression. Number 1, in a fixed LD expression, the measures are aggregated. And then number 2, they're always aggregated to specific dimension. As you can see here, there's a lot of parallels between what metrics they find outside of Tableau and also what you can use within Tableau itself. And finally, you can store all the different fixed LD and any calculation you have in Tableau into published data sources. So with that, I want to talk about, so that means bringing external metric into Tableau can be quite simple, at least semantically speaking. So on the right-hand side of the slide here, I've highlighted 2 key pillars that you as data dev would care about. The data stack of Tableau, and next to it, how you access it via services and API. So today, Tableau has the most comprehensive list of connectors, and they can range from bringing in unaggregated data using relational databases to aggregated data using cubes. Once you have brought in your data into Tableau, you define your data model that I talked about earlier, and then store within the Tableau data source to power your worksheet, your dashboard, and Pulse. You can choose to keep this semantic for yourself to use as an embedded data source or share them with your colleagues as a published data source. With a later talk from Joe Chiroff, you'll hear about how to access these published data sources using VDS. And finally, metrics from lookers are aggregated like cubes, but analysts want to use them like relational data, which you can access within the published data source using VDS. Now, how does that work? So you may have already heard about us working on joining published data sources, also known as composable data sources. Part of this work is to enable analysts to leverage each other's work by inheriting the published data sources themselves. So here they appear as separate data sources that are encapsulated within the gray boxes. So the warehouse team might keep track of inventory data in this data source, and the marketing team might keep track of the marketing and campaign data within the marketing data source. And it could be sourced from a Looker Explorer. And then the sales team may keep track of sales data inside this gray box. And then finally, now you can bring in 3 separate data sources, add new tables within your current data source, and then you can even bring in metrics or save query from DBT itself. So these analysts now can bring in these metric groups or as virtual logical tables into Tableau, and they can just use relationship to stitch all these results together. So with that, I am going to switch to a demo on how this works. So currently, we are sort of at the design phase of this integration. So I will be doing more of a Figma, and so you can see how this would work here. So I'll see about. So here is the design of what we have thinking. So imagine you connect to DBT, metric flow, and there you would connect to your instance, and you will see, of course, the standard DBT of having an all metric that basically have access to the entire semantic layer. And you may only group certain metrics within the marketing domain into a marketing save query. And then you can just bring them out in Tableau as a single logical table. And behind the scene, what Tableau does is that we abstract away all the calculation and just rely on DBT to bring that in. So once you bring in DBT metrics within the marketing cloud, you can also connect to your Microsoft Excel, and you can bring in your sales data. In your sales data, you can just bring out the sales table. Now, once you have the sales table here, you can see there's 2 separate base tables. And then a new feature that you'll be seeing coming out of Tableau is something what we call a calculated table, or the ability for you to create a shared dimension table. So what this does is that behind the scene, you bring it out, and then we'll add the relationship. And then within this relationship, you identify what are the dimensions that you want to use for marketing to bring into this new table. So in this case, we want to relate the marketing product in the column in the marketing metric virtual table into this new computer table. And here now you have all the marketing value, the product value from the marketing table. And then next, we'll add in sales, and we relate sales to product as well. And now you have a shared dimension between marketing and sales. So now we created the semantic for you to bring in metrics from DBT, and you can bring in relational data from outside from your existing connector. And then Tableau itself, you'll create this table that stitch the data from these 2 sets of data. We believe this will be very important for you to help not only to examine the metrics you already have, but able to relate the metrics with your relational data. So it's help you become more agile and evolve the metrics you already have. So imagine now that you've created this table, you can switch over before you switch over the worksheet tab, you can also govern like the domain within this shared dimension table. What are the things that are in there and which should take precedence, for example. So you might have some product from the marketing metrics. You might not have that in sales, or you might have that in sales, and which ones should take precedence. So something in Tableau today, when you do blending, you only have primary and secondary data source. In this new world, you can arrange it in a stack level manner, in a sequence that you want. So when that is done, you can switch over to the worksheet tab. And now you can start your analysis. Here you can bring in marketing from the marketing table. Bring in product from the product table. And then you can bring in your sales data from your sales table. So you see how much sales you have for this hypothetical product. And then now you can bring in your marketing data as well. So as you can see, Tableau actually combined your two sets of data. You will see market, you will see product where you have sales, but not necessarily marketing. But you also will see potentially marketing data that you might not have sales information for. So Tableau just outer join these two sets of data together. And this way, you can also create additional calculation between your relational data and also your metric data together. And that's where we see Tableau is going, in the sense that we provide you a platform for you to be able to integrate data from multiple sources together, and not just from relational data, but also from your metric data. And this is how we stitch together the metric or semantic layer outside of Tableau into Tableau. With that, I will switch back to my regular presentation. So as you can see here, the kernel of all of this work that powers everything else within Tableau is the published data source. Because once you create all this information within Tableau, you can use it to power your visualization. You can create new pulse metrics. You can integrate it with your apps. You can even use Tableau to generate your workflow. And you'll hear a lot more of this from my colleague, Joe Chiroff, in a later talk. With that, I think I went pretty fast, so I actually have a few minutes for Q&A. I am not sure how the arrangement works. If we can unmute folks, then you can ask questions.
Yeah, we can. People can't unmute themselves, but Thomas, I can ask you these questions, and you can answer me back. How about that?
Sounds great.
So someone asked if there are live examples of how to use multi-fact. I know this is new, so there are not a lot of online, they said.
I see. Well, I'm not sure I understand using multi-fact live. Do you want me to demo it?
I mean, maybe that's what it is. Maybe someone's just looking to see how multi-fact works.
Okay. Speaking of which, I just happen to have Tableau open.
Live code. Let's do it.
Yes. Yeah. So this is shipped in June. So what happened in this, let me go through a scenario how you would use multi-fact. So a big part of the problem today in Tableau, let me actually do this live and reset up my demo that I did yesterday. So in Tableau today, you have the ability to create a table, and you can add more tables, so you can branch out from a single table to multiple tables. A big request that we've heard from customer in the community forum is the ability for you to branch out to multiple tables and then branch back into the same table, to a different table. This is usually a case where you have a single measure heavy table, like sales transaction, related to some dimension tables, and then they want to relate it back to another fact table. So the way we solve this circularity in the relationship is by breaking it up. So if you have multiple set of fact tables, or you have multiple snowflake or star schema, you take the center of the star or snowflake schema and you create a new base table with it. So in this case with marketing. Once you've done that, we introduce a concept of a meatball and use this meatball to relate to existing tables that you have. So in this particular case, sales and marketing can be combined together using dates and product together or separately. And that's the flexibility of the relationship. And you can imagine now, if you have a hypothetical retail store, you have inventory data, you have marketing data, you have sales and support data. Now you can create this complicated data model within Tableau, and Tableau being pride itself for being easy to use, we also create in such a way that the people who create a data model might not necessarily be the people who are using the data model, such that we actually help guide you. So in this case, let's focus on product. So products relate to 3 of these facts, but not the 4th fact. So imagine you're a marketing person. You start with marketing data, you bring out marketing spend, and you can break this down by different marketing type. So notice Tableau actually gray out the tables that have no direct relationship with marketing data. So this is the first way of sort of informing you why you don't want to use these fields. You can also hover this as the new info setting we've added. We explain what will happen if you were to use this field. Now, you wouldn't go on this, what I call the happy path. You decide to bring out marketing, for example, to replace marketing type. Now, Tableau no longer gray out inventory and sales, for example. So you can bring out inventory data and you can bring out sales data. And if you choose to make product as a filter, did you filter any product, for example, it would affect all 3 columns. However, if I use marketing type, and you show the filter, it should only affect, marketing type should only affect only the marketing column, but not the other 2 columns. Notice the other 2 columns stay intact. So these are the new flexible semantics now that are built into Tableau multi-fact relationship.
All right, thanks for the example. And we'll take that feedback back. It sounds like multi-fact people are interested in. Yep. Couple more. People are feeding them in, Thomas. Get ready here. Is there a way to audit the joins that happen behind the scenes with the Tableau data model?
Good question you asked. So this, I'm showing you something that will be coming up, but it's not yet available today. So in fact, if you, there will be a new option called View Data Model. And in this View Data Model, we finally had a breakthrough in Tableau that we have ability for you to create a separate UI. So as you can remember, this is a data model that's powering this particular visualization. Now in the new world, you can actually turn this on. It will only show you the tables that are involved in the visualization. So if I were to say I remove sales, and you notice Tableau will only show you the tables that are involved. So there are 2 ways of doing it. You can do it visually this way, or you can use existing worksheet describe sheet. Let me show you in describe sheet. We actually tells you for the different measure, we tells you what are the tables that are involved for generating each of the measures. So in this case, like for each of the measure, what tables are involved in creating them. So there, so these are the ways that were available for customer to use. But of course, Tableau being Tableau, we are very open. You can also download this tool called TLV or Tableau Log Viewer. So you can actually check Tableau and see what SQL query Tableau issued behind the scene. And so we're trying to be as much as open as possible so that you can inspect and be able to audit what Tableau is doing.
All right. Thank you, Thomas. So future, I love it. So someone asked, will Tableau Prep allow for better create star and snowflake schemas, or is that something we delegate to the data warehouse? I'm not asking you to specifically answer this question, Thomas, but maybe you have thoughts before I ramble on.
Yeah, I have opinions. So my opinion is use Tableau Prep to clean and compact your data into these conceptual entity like a virtual like a table. And of course, you can use this as to row-level security with virtual connection. So do not think of Prep as a pure end-to-end data modeling tool, but think of using Prep to create these entities that represent conceptual things in your head, and then use Tableau to relate these conceptual entities together. So in this case, you might use Prep to stitch data from multiple sources for like customer, for example. You might have a mailing list of your customer. You might have a list of customer from your promotion. You might have customer from some way of tracking how many people bought things from you. And then use prep to create a single table of data. And then once you create a single table of data, then you can use Tableau hyperconnection and bring this table into your data model. So the way to think of prep is basically once you have an established flow of how you want to organize and curate your data, turn that into a prep flow. But before that, you can also use Tableau to explore your data. And also you can use that Tableau at the end of sort of bringing all these conceptual entities together so that you can perform your analysis.
I love it. And I was going to say something very similar. All right. The questions are flowing in fast. This is a good question, I thought. Can we do this in Hyper API, or does this have to be done from desktop? I would essentially ask, like, maybe can the Tableau data model be codified?
That's a very good question. So I would suggest that you should save this question for Joe, whether you hear from him for VDS. So a big part of VDS is for you too. I'm not going to reveal too much. I'll have Joe talk about VDS later, but there could be a future VDS for you to create this data model via API, right?
I love that. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Is this available for Tableau Public?
Of course.
All right. Of course. Let's see here. Sorry, reading all of these questions. It's fantastic. Trying to find ones for Thomas specifically. We talked about that. Are the calculated tables only compatible with dbt data sources, or I would assume maybe other semantic platform sources is maybe the question?
Very good question. The way we see calculate semantics is imagine Tableau write its own custom SQL for you. So no, it will not just for DBT, but it'll be available for any other tables. So in fact, we're thinking of shipping this early before we actually bring in metric integration. So of course that depends on availability of resources. If you're interested in this and you can talk to or give feedback to our leadership in terms of resources, and maybe we'll get this out earlier than sooner than better, because one of the biggest feedback we heard from customers, besides wanting the ability to filter per logical table, is the ability for a customer like yourself to be able to generate these tables on the fly rather than you having to create this outside of Tableau.
I'm not sure where this one specifically came in, and thank you for that one, Thomas. But someone asked, I'm assuming while you were going through your demo, what about the underlying physical table joins?
You can still access them. I did not use them in this particular example. You can always access physical joins. So if you double click on any logical table, you can always bring in additional table here and perform your join. If that's what you like to do, that's okay too. Tableau can accommodate that.
All right.
And by the way, one of the best use of physical join, if you were to create entitlement table, and then you double click on each of these tables, bring in the tables you want to join, and then the entitlement table, we reduce the amount of row based on row level security there.
This one is a little bit even, this is a little bit beyond me, but maybe you can help me answer this one. Can you recap how data source filters currently operate with MFR? Not sure what that is, but hopefully you know, yes. Thomas.
Yes, I will. Yeah, this is a very deep cut here. I think this one is hard to explain. I'll try.
All right, so this will be our last one, and then we'll go to the next. But this is a good question, so we'll
the way filter in MFR multi-fact relationship work, they actually depend on how you apply it. So one thing you might notice, and it's a very detailed. If you look at tables today, there's some table with borders that are really thin, and there are tables with border that's a little bit thicker. If you hover over on tables that have a thin border, then when you apply a filter there, the existing pervasive filter or data source filter here, what Tableau does behind the scene, it join across all the tables that are highlighted here, and it applied to all those tables. So not only do we remove the rows from support table, but all the rows have inner join to support that have been removed. However, if you apply a filter to tables that have slightly thicker border, it can apply to both sales and support. So that's how MFR actually gives you very fine-tuned control on the scope of your filter. And that's what customer expected, because customers here, in this case, is being shared between sales and support. So therefore, when you use sales, customer will apply. When you use support, customer will apply. However, if you use marketing, customer filter will not apply, because notice when I hover over a customer, marketing is grayed out. And you can actually see this as part of the info sending tooltip, that you can see what will happen and whether a filter will get applied or not.
All right. One more. You got 1 minute. Is multi-factor relationship going to support for the metadata API with upstream and downstream data sources?
Upstream and downstream, I'm not sure I understand that question. I think everything that you have, all the API you have access today should support what's available in multi-factor relationship. We basically, behind the scene, we changed the file format a little bit, and we changed how we do the query. So all the API access you're used to today should just work, because we do not change the API, that API itself.
And I think to answer your question a little bit more fully, we would need to sync some of the metadata API from upstream and or downstream sources. I would think of it kind of upstream for us. So there might be work to be done there, but we are working on different ways to bring in this lineage and metadata information, even to this connectivity screen right here. So that's something we're working on. I know a whole bunch of people ask questions about prep, which is not Thomas's subject matter expertise, but we can look to get those answers answered as well. Some folks asked about incremental extract. We are always making improvements to incremental extract, and I think we just came out with one. I'll look up that information. Plans to support table formatting export to Excel. No, why would we do that? We don't want people going back to Excel from where we are. I understand that everyone wants to do this, but we do have some interesting things I think Joe is going to talk about with VDS that could answer some of that question about the Excel. So
regarding adding relationship for extract for prep, please contact Jared Flores. He's actually working on the ability for you to actually create relationship between different prep flow together. So I work with him on that. So yes, all the feedback you're giving us, we're listening. We're trying to find ways to get that out to you.
So I'm going to let Thomas, I'm going to let you throw that individual under the bus. But absolutely. All right. So thank you, Thomas. I appreciate you.